Here is the list of materials you will need in order to complete 100% of the course. You can also download a PDF containing all the information as an additional resource. So first, you will need, of course, a Raspberry Pi board. I suggest you get the Raspberry Pi 4 version, but if you have version 3 or 2, that's also fine. Now, if you get the Raspberry Pi 4, you can choose between 2, 4 or 8 GB of RAM. The more the better, of course, but it also gets more expensive. I personally use the 2 GB version and it works perfectly fine for me. For your Raspberry Pi, you will need also a power supply. Don't power your Pi directly from your computer, okay? Your computer can't deliver enough power for the Raspberry Pi to work correctly. So if you have a power supply included when you buy the Raspberry Pi, that's perfect. Otherwise, you can also use a phone charger with at least 2 amp and 5 volt. And that's what I personally do. I use my own phone charger. Now you will need a micro SD card so you can install an operating system on your Raspberry Pi. Make sure you use a micro SD card that is at least class 10 and with minimum 8 GB of space. 16 or 32 GB of space is better if you can, and well, you really don't need more than that. And we will also use the Raspberry Pi camera module. This, I would say, can be optional if you can't get one. You will still be able to finish the course, but the final project won't be complete without the camera. So if you get one, note that you have two different models. The standard one with a green board and the noir version with a black board. The black version is perfect for working in the dark, but won't produce good looking pictures in daylight compared to the standard green version. For this course, I will be using the standard one, and this is the one I recommend if you're going to buy one and don't have a specific project which requires working in the dark. Either way, all of the instructions will work for both cameras. Alright, the components for now are the ones related to the Raspberry Pi side of the course. Now let's look at the Arduino side. And of course you will need first an Arduino board plus a USB cable that you usually get when you buy the board. Here you can use pretty much any Arduino board you want. It doesn't really matter as long as you can connect to it with a USB cable and that you can have at least 12 pins that you can use to connect components. I will personally use an Arduino Uno board, and actually not even the official one, but a clone. So you can use any Arduino version and get a non-official clone if you want to. That's going to work without any problem. And then we need a bunch of hardware components that we are going to control with the Arduino. One note for those components: you can usually find them all or almost all in either an Arduino starter kit or a breadboard kit. In fact, all the components I use for the course project are part of an Arduino starter kit I previously bought, which you can see here on the screen. I want to keep things simple so you can reduce the amount of stuff you need to buy. So either in a starter kit or both separately, you will need a breadboard, some male-to-male wires, as well as some resistors. We will use 220 ohm as well as 10 kilo ohm resistors. An RGB LED, which is an LED with 4 pins, and well, if you don't have one, you can also replace it with 3 standard LEDs. That's going to work the same. You will need a push button, a passive buzzer that you can recognize with the PCB that you can see on the bottom. Okay, you should see that the bottom of the passive buzzer is green. You will need an LCD screen. The one I will use is a 16:2 character screen. It's pretty common. Note here that if you can get it already soldered, that's better, so you don't have to do it by yourself. And then a potentiometer, which we will actually use to calibrate the LCD screen, and a servo motor. If you can also, but that's not mandatory for this course, you can also get an external power supply for the servo motor. If you do so, make sure to respect the max voltage you can apply to the servo. You can usually find this voltage on the servo motor description, specs, or datasheet. Well, that's it for the list of parts we will use. If you already have an Arduino board and a Raspberry Pi board, you can already start the course while waiting for the other components.